In the first installment of the Tasmota tips and tricks videos, we're going to check out mqtt retain packets. Do you want them? Do you not want them? When do you need them? And when do you not need them? Let's check out the love-hate relationship with mqtt retain packets. So in this demonstration video, we'll be using the Teckin Power Strip. They sent us over one of the power strips we can test out till you convert on. It does have a powered USB of 4 ports that are connected together. You can turn the USB on and off, and each individual plug is also individually controlled through Tasmota or ESP Home, which we'll be using Tasmota, of course, in this video. But each plug can be individually controlled and does have an LED per plug. There's also 2 LEDs behind the power plug, a red and a blue, that you can use to indicate when a plug is on, and also use with the link light to determine if there's Wi-Fi and MQTT connections. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so you can catch all these videos of all the Tasmota tips and tricks. We're going to sprinkle them in between our other little project videos and review videos just to get everybody up to speed on the various parts and pieces of Tasmota. So while we are talking about MQTT retain packets, it's going to be mainly based around Home Assistant with Tasmota. Now you can use the set option 19, which is the HA auto discovery of MQTT, and it may help alleviate some of this, but there are some other issues that come about using the auto discovery method. And much like myself and many others, we like to manually put our switches and different components for MQTT into the configuration YAML. That way they do stay put, and also we can make some minor configuration changes, such as what we have to do with the 3-way switches. Now, one thing we do run into a lot, and such as the forums and the Discord, is just some old configurations that when many of us didn't know any better, including myself, where we have the retain equals true listed in our configuration. That does cause issues, and you always don't know how to clear it out. So we're going to show you how to easily clear it out. But first, before we get there, we're going to show you what happens when you do put a retain message into MQTT and it makes the light go on and off. So we've configured the power strip with Tasmota, and you can see we do have the 5 buttons up top for each individual relay for the 4 plugs and the USB plug. You can simply turn them on and off with the GUI, and you can see they each individually have red LEDs to indicate when they're on or off. This power strip works as a perfect example of how we can show with MQTT retain packets when you don't want them and when you do. So flipping over to the console in Tasmota, we're actually going to simulate a Wi-Fi disconnect of this particular power strip and what it does, because we have issued some retained power commands to this switch. So in the Unify controller, we're going to go ahead and force a reconnect and then flip back to the console. Now take note that we have plug 1, plug 2, and plug 4 that are on the power strip right now. What should happen during a reconnect is you should retain the state of all of your relays, and you should not toggle them, and they should not turn on or off. We'll flip back to the console. Now you'll notice that 1, 2, and 3 are on now. Let's go ahead and we'll force another reconnect. So we'll go to the controller, we'll hit reconnect. See it reconnecting. Now you'll notice plug 3 turned off and 4 turned back on. And the reason for that is there's 2 retained packets in the MQTT broker itself. Now first, what you would want to do is in your configuration YAML, you'll make sure and search anywhere in your configuration for retain of true. You don't want the retain of true on any of your Tasmota switches or plugs, etc., unless you have some very specific reason you're needing to do that. So once you've corrected all of those and all of your configurations, and make sure if you've also done that, any type of on or off commands in Node-RED, that you also don't use the retain option when you're setting that power command either. So go ahead and fix all of those, and then we'll show you how to fix them in the MQTT broker. So one of the easiest ways I've found to clear any retained messages, because once you fix them in the configuration YAML, they're still going to be in that broker, And there are other ways to clear them, such as reinstalling or deleting the mosquito database, etc. But sometimes that can be cumbersome for people, and also, let's just all do it by a GUI, right? There's a great product called mqtt Explorer, and of course we will leave the links in the description of the video for any software and configurations we use. Now, mqtt Explorer allows you to see in a tree view all of your mqtt packets that go across the broker. It's also an excellent tool for troubleshooting anything and seeing the values come across. Now, mqtt Explorer is available for several different operating systems. There's Windows, there's Mac, Ubuntu, Linux, etc. And just follow the links through and install the software. It's very simple to do. So once you've installed the software, you'll need to go ahead and add a new connection. You just hit the plus button, add, and call it Home Assistant. We don't need to validate any certificate because our broker is actually local. Leave the protocol as MQTT. You need to go ahead and put in your host information, such as your IP address of your HAS.io or wherever you might have Home Assistant or MQTT installed. Typically, you want to leave the port 1883 unless you've changed it, and then the username and password if you have one. Once you've done that, you want to hit the Save button, and then you'll want to hit Connect. Now, once it connects, you'll see all your various topics on the left-hand side in a tree type of format. And actually, it will jump around showing all the MQTT going across in real time, which is pretty cool because you can actually watch and learn how all of the MQT actions are happening back and forth in your home. So one thing you want to look for right off the bat is you want to look for any topic that is just cmnd. Now, if you have ran set option 19 before, and say even if you've turned it off, your topic could be switched in Tasmota itself. To make sure if you do have that issue, if you look in the console of your switches, you'll notice either they start with the custom topic or they do start with tele or cmnd, etc. Now, you'll notice mine start with cmnd. If yours do start with that, you want to make note of that and have to look for the actual unique topic in the MQTT Explorer tree. So back in MQTT Explorer, you'll want to look for anything that is cmnd. Now, if you don't see any right off the bat, hey, perfect. You probably don't have any retained messages. Now, if you sit here and let it run for a little bit and say flip any switches, you will see one of the cmnd ones, which is fine because it just saw that packet go across. But let's go ahead and inspect the cmnds and check for any of them that are retained. So simply hit the triangle on the left. It'll open up to show the different devices. This one is the Teckin Strip 1, and you can see we do have a power 3 equals toggle and a power 4 equals toggle. Now, right off the bat, you notice when we look at this toggle message, right in red is showing a retained message. And so just keep this in mind. Any CMNDs that have a retained flag is usually a bad thing in the world of Tasmota and Home Assistant. So you want to get rid of those. And it's very simple to get rid of those using MQTT Explorer. No backlog commands, no crazy button topics or switch retains, etc. You can do it all right here in MQTT Explorer with just a few clicks. So it's this simple. Just click on the red X and get rid of the retained message. You can also use the little trash can on the top left to also clear the topic. So let's check out our Power 4 topic. It also has a retained message, and we'll just click and get rid of that one. And what you want to do is just make sure and get rid of any retained command messages in MQTT Explorer. Let's take a look at the ifan02 that I have and see if it has a retained message. Now you'll notice it does not have a retained message, which that's a good thing. So this one's okay. And if you do toggle some other switches while you're checking this out, you can look at those and see if they're retained as well. For instance, we just had another one pop up as we were recording this video. We can take a look at the TAS Power. Power 5 on, and you'll notice it's good to go. There is no retained message, so no worries. Now, if you want to make sure you did get rid of all those retained messages, simply close MQTT Explorer and reopen it and look for any messages that may still be in there that are retained. Because the reason why when you'll see those retained messages is anytime you disconnect and reconnect, whether it be intentionally or through a Wi-Fi disconnect, reconnect, or a reboot of some sort, the MQTT broker will send over all of the retained messages to that device and say, hey, I've retained these messages and you should have them. Now in the command world, for power commands, we don't want those commands again when we reboot or when we have a Wi-Fi disconnect on a device. So that's where retained messages are a bad thing, is on the command side. Now let's see if this fixed our power strip. So you can see we have ports 1, 2, and 4 are powered up and 3 is off. Let's go ahead and force a MQTT disconnect. Let's go back to the controller and we'll hit reconnect. You can see it reconnected to MQTT and Wi-Fi. And you'll notice it did not change the power state of any of the ports. It just simply picked up the new Wi-Fi connection and reconnected to MQTT like nothing happened. And that's what we want. So what about, when do we want retained messages? Well, the simple way is, think about it, we don't want retained messages that go into the device, but we're going to want retained messages that come out of the device, such as the state of each relay. So that's when retained messages are good. And I'll show you how to turn on the retained messages for the power state in all of your Tasmota devices. So many of us have probably seen this before, where the state of the switch in Home Assistant is not correct based on what the actual state of the switch is in. So you can see here we have the 5 switches of the power strip. And when we check the Tasmota GUI, they don't correspond to actually what's shown in Home Assistant. Now, if we do toggle one of them actually in Tasmota, you'll notice in Home Assistant, it does show the state because Home Assistant actually heard that MQTT message of the state of switch 1. Now, we could go through and toggle every single switch and that would set the state. But of course, anytime you reboot Home Assistant, you don't want to run around the house and have to flip all the light switches to get them all in the right state. So there's 2 ways we're going to fix this, and they cover some various scenarios that I use both methods to make sure I always have the correct state of the switch in Home Assistant. So just to show you how the state won't stay, let's go ahead and reboot Home Assistant and not toggle any switches on the power strip itself. Go to General and restart. Now you'll notice once we've restarted, we go back in and look at the power strip and the state is defaulted back to off, even though we still have the power strip of various ports turned on. So let's fix that one way, and we will show a reason why we have to put both methods in to make sure that we have a solid state of all of our switches. So first thing what you'll want to do in all of your various switches is go into the console, and we'll show you a real quick way to push this to all of your switches in one shot. So go to console and type in power retain 1. And that will turn power retain on. Now let's see if it fixed the issue. And don't forget, we will show you how to push this to all of your switches at one time. So we're going to go ahead and toggle switch 1 off, then back on, and then we can see it in Home Assistant. It is the state of on. Now you'll notice we still don't have switch 2 and 4 showing the correct state in Home Assistant, even though we have turned power retain on. Let's go ahead and reboot Home Assistant and see if it corrects the states. We'll restart it. Back in Overview, the Teckin. Now good. You'll notice that the switch we did change the state is now showing its state even after a Home Assistant reboot. Now one of the scenario that could happen is with the power retain is if you're rebooting Home Assistant, which also has your MQTT broker, such as HAS.io, etc., and you change the state of the switch, Well, the power retained packet never makes it to the MQTT broker, and so you could miss the state of a switch during a reboot if someone changes that light during those crucial seconds, or depending on your hardware, longer than that during that reboot. So how do we fix that, and how do we get the states every time during a reboot? We're going to do it with a simple automation that pulls all of your lights and switches when Home Assistant reboots. So we will leave this for a simple copy and paste. We either leave it in the video description, and also I'll leave it on my website to try to keep the formatting of this so you can copy it straight into your automation's YAML. So what you'll want in this automation is what it does. It's just going to send to the group topic of all of your switches. And if you have changed other group topics like we've covered in our smart light control, you will want to do this with all your various group topics if you've changed the group topics on various lights and switches. This one's just going to send to the default sonoffs group topic. And what this does, it sends over a power 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 command. Now, if you do have some switches or devices that have more than 5, you'll want to make sure and put power 6, power 7, up to, etc. Now, also what I've included in here, since we do cover a lot of dimmers on this channel, is I did push the dimmer command, which will force all of your Tasmota devices to push back the dimmer command. Now, if some of your devices do not have this many power relays, don't worry about that. They'll just show an unknown command and ignore a power 4, if say if it's just a Sonoff basic, or if it doesn't have dimming, etc. Then also, if you're doing a light configuration that posts the tele command after, we do push a state to make sure all of the lights push their state out back with their various colors and dimming levels. And it does it all in one little backlog command for you. So once you put that into your automation YAML, you'll need to save that, and then you'll need to turn that automation on in Home Assistant. So once you have saved that, make sure you always do a check config. You'll get a configuration valid, you know you're good to go. You don't have to reboot the whole Home Assistant configuration. You can just hit reload automations. Now in your GUI of Lovelace or whatnot, you may have to expose that automation to make sure and turn it on, or you could find it in your unused entities. So here's mine. It's the Sonoff State on HA startup. We'll turn it on. And before we reboot, let's go ahead and check back on the Teckin to make sure it still does not have the state of the other relays that are turned on, and it doesn't. So let's go ahead and reboot Home Assistant and see what happens. So restart, we'll go back to overview, and we'll go to Teckin. And there you have it. You can see now there's a state of switch port 2 and switch port 3, 4, etc. Because what happens if we flip back to the console of this particular power strip, you'll see that exact backlog command. You can see right here, it's getting a power 1, power 2, power 3, power 4, power 5, and then this is also the dimmer command, which it says it's unknown because there's no dimmer on this power strip. So it just ignores it, and it's no worry, it's just in the log. And what that does, it doesn't make that power switch change of any state because we didn't put an on or off with it. It just simply says, hey, what state are you in? Tell me. And so what that does is Home Assistant picks up all those packets from all of your switches and makes sure it has the correct state of all of your switches and lights every time you reboot Home Assistant. So last but not least, let's go ahead and publish that power retain message to all of our Tasmota devices. So first, go to any device and go to the console. So simply type in publish cmnd sonoffs / power retain space 1, and then hit enter. And you should see your switch you're on now, power retain on. Now we'll go ahead and check the console of another switch just to make sure it published it across all of our various devices. So we can look on one of our Martin Jerry dimmers, go to the console, and there you have it. You can see that we turned on the power retain of all of our Tasmota devices in one shot straight from another Tasmota device. Now keep in mind, if you did change the group topic of various devices from the default of Sonoffs, you would need to change that command to the group topic that you've changed it to to send power retain 1, or you could just go to each individual switch and type in power retain space 1 on the console of each, but that's too much trouble. Let's just do it automatically. So there you have it. Now you understand why you should like and hate retain packets with MQTT and Tasmota. Remember, you want retain packets out of your devices and not into your devices. So just keep that in mind, and you'll always have your switches in the right state, and you won't have that ghost switching issue if any devices happen to reboot or have a Wi-Fi disconnect. There's no reinstalling or different command lines or trying to clear all these various packets. You just do it through the GUI in MQTT Explorer, and you can easily check on it from time to time using that tool. So I hope you enjoyed our first installment of the Tasmota tips and tricks videos. Definitely give us a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see something else in a future video, leave us a comment down below and we'll see if we can put it in the next video. So I appreciate you watching. Definitely become a subscriber and hit that bell icon, and y'all take care.